here for, and all that, and it's all different. So I don't know. You know, they wouldn't give me any answer, but I go with the extraterrestrial hypothesis the most. You know, as far as I know, they could be from another dimension, or the past, or the future, or even from Earth. But I think the most likely explanation is that it's extraterrestrial beings. People always talk about the alien agenda in the singular, like they just all have one purpose. But Stan Friedman in his talk there here this weekend was saying, well, you know, if you go to the airport, are all those people there for the same purpose? You know, there's people going everywhere, and they've all got their own different ideas of what they're doing. So I go along with alien agendas in the plural, and you know, probably everything you could think of would be a legitimate reason, and probably something we could never even imagine.
Given the extent of the trauma that you described from the when you were thrown back, do you think that they treated you in any way? And has anybody ever looked to see that there was any evidence that you sustained trauma that was?
Yeah, the question is about the possible trauma from being hit by that beam, and that was the reason my brother's primary intention, as soon as he had me, was to get me away from the Snowflake, which was just a madhouse. Because you know, there was reporters from Japan and England, and you know, people taking pictures through the windows and just harassing phone calls, and just people, you know, driving from out of state to be there. It was a carnival. So you know, I was in no shape to try to get medical help there, but that was the first thing my brother wanted, and so we finally did get some medical help. I had all kinds of tests, blood and urine samples were put through the county medical examiner, like I said, and I had upper body X-rays, EKG, EEG, brainwave scan, and everything turned out to be very normal. You know, the psychological trauma, the lack of sleep, there were symptoms of that, but that, you know, gradually subsided. But you know, physically, you know, I've been in excellent health ever since. Actually, you know, probably unusually healthy. I recently went back to my employer and got a printout, and I have not called in sick one time in the last 38 years. So, you know, it might just be a coincidence, you know, good genetics and taking care of myself.
I was curious if you might have post-traumatic stress disorder from it, or maybe still have nightmares involved with it to this day, or have you been able to come to terms with it?
Well, you know, the comparison with post-traumatic stress disorder, they didn't call it that back then. They called it shell-shocked, and one news reporter there in Phoenix, you know, called me shell-shocked, and that would have been accurate. But at that time, there weren't the support groups that exist now, so I was on my own. And even the psychiatrists that observed the hypnosis were saying, you know, is our conclusion, which is absolute, that he is not lying, he's been through a life trauma. They didn't believe in UFOs. They just said, you know, he's telling the truth and he's traumatized, but we have no explanation for what happened. They did try to come up with some kind of a psychological explanation, but you know, like I said, the testing disproved all that. But it was rough going, and I was on my own. I used a technique that's not recommended. It's highly frowned upon. It's denial and compartmentalization. I just boxed up these memories and set them off to the side, and just wouldn't think about it. I just take these elements one piece at a time, and gradually, you know, got better and better over the years. And it's still something that to this day is just can knock me right up. You know, seeing this video or this other one, this reenactment that just come out that Paranormal Witness did, which will be showing on Monday, I believe it is, and that, you know, is so accurate that, you know, watching that is just, man, I find myself, I suddenly realize I'm not breathing, you know, got to stop and start gasping because, you know, there's still a lot of that trauma with me, but in my later thinking and realizing that rather than being an abduction or any sort of intentional cruelty or experimentation on me, that it was probably them just trying to revive me because of an accident that happened because of my own actions. You know, that's helping me to come to terms with the fact that they probably didn't mean any harm, and it was just my own foolish actions that caused that. Was there a question over here? Yeah.
Yeah, about 14 years before your case, there was the famous Barney and Betty Hill abduction. Have you ever talked to them about their case? I mean, do you believe them? And do you, I mean, and did you see similarities between, you know, their abduction and yours?
Well, Dr. Harder, who did the hypnosis on me, knew Betty Hill, and he thought it would be helpful if I was to talk to her. So he called her up and he put her on the phone, and it was helpful. She had some good advice. You know, not so much about dealing with the memories of what had happened. You know, that's a very individual thing, but of dealing with people's reaction to it, which was very helpful. And I've said that the reaction I was getting from people had as much of an impact on my life as the memories of what happened. It was really difficult trying to deal with something that shocked the paradigm that people were accustomed to having. They had a worldview that they were very comfortable with that this seemed to threaten. And so a lot of stuff came my way that I don't feel that I deserved. You know, a certain amount of skepticism is understandable, but early in my book, I quote Emerson: "Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance." And so many people would, you know, pass judgment on what we were saying happened without knowing even the basic facts of the case. And so, you know, I just kept saying over and over again, all I ask is just look at the facts first, you know, before you make up your mind. We don't have absolute proof, you know, even with all the kinds of evidence that occurred at the site. There was radiation readings, there was electromagnetic readings that were taken, even an anomalous growth spurt in the trees surrounding that spot. Right there where the craft came down, we learned like 15 years after it happened that there had been a phenomenal increase in the rate of growth. And this is really easy to track because, you know, there you get one growth ring for each year that the tree grows. And this particular tree was examined right before the movie came out, so we can date all this. Counting back 15 years to the date of the incident, the tree had doubled in diameter. And since the outside of the tree is bigger than the inside, you know, the calculation is complex geometry, but basically the trees were producing wood fiber at 36 times the rate they had in the previous 85 years. So here's a 100-year-old tree, and more than half of its growth within the last 15 years. And when I went back there here year before last with the National Geographic to do some research on the site, we found a stump right near where the craft came down that had been logged the year prior to the incident. So here was a tree that would have been removed prior to the incident. So it was a 200-year-old tree. And that was a record of the growth conditions at that spot for 200 years prior. And the amount of variation in the growth was similar to what you see in the first part of the growth rings here. So for all of the skeptics who had theories about an extra wet year, rainy year, or something like that, none of that pans out because there was actually a period of drought in there that didn't seem to affect growth at all. In the post-incident growth period. So all these samples are going to the lab. There's a lot of more samples, soil samples, and there's an expedition plan back there to check for if the radiation was still high. Nobody ever checked that. I expect it wouldn't be, but we'll check the magnetism, a whole lot of follow-up research, and a whole lot of new things coming out with the, like these FBI files and some other sort of government connections. There was a lady that was working in the fire lookout tower near where this happened, and right after it happened, there was a government crew that came in with these magnetic measuring equipment, which is normally done from the air, but they were doing it on the ground. And this was immediately following the incident. And this lady worked for the local newspaper, so she's a reliable source about some kind of government interest in magnetic readings in that area. But let's get another question.
It's
Yeah.
actually fine, unfortunately. It's been an hour.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. We've run out of time.
I'm so sorry.
I've got some books back here. If you'd like to ask a quick question or two, we'll wrap it up. Thanks for coming. I appreciate you listening. Thank you.